Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel. So today I wanted to talk about Matt McGorry, but as I was looking into the cringe fest that is essentially everything he does, I started to think about toxic masculinity, and we see this term being thrown around a lot, but there aren't that many times where people stop to actually explain exactly what they mean by toxic masculinity, because a lot of the times I just see it being kind of conflated with what feminists believe, but I digress. I'm not saying that's the case. So here I looked up the definition of toxic masculinity, and I came across two in the first results. So the first one is Wikipedia, so while I'm not saying it's completely unbiased, it's definitely less biased than the second one I'm going to read to you. So it says that toxic masculinity is used in the social sciences to describe traditional norms of behavior among men in contemporary American European society that are associated with detrimental social and psychological effects. Such toxic masculine norms include dominance, devaluation of women, extreme self-reliance, and the suppression of emotions. Okay. The other website I was looking at was called Geek Feminism Wiki. So this one says, toxic masculinity is one of the ways in which patriarchy is harmful to men. It refers to the socially constructed attitudes that describe masculine gender role as violent, unemotional, sexually aggressive, and so forth. So then Geek Feminism goes on to give us examples. Oh, and before I go forth, I'm in no way implying that men have to improve everything and women don't have to improve anything. It's just the fact that since women now in society are kind of being treated, especially by the feminists, the SJWs, as if they are already perfect and superior, I figured we would focus on men since it seems like they're getting all the shit right now.
You still can't make fun of people for race or gender or sexual orientation or religion.
Who let the lemon head into the room? You are a waste of life and you should give up.
The pervasive idea of male-female interactions as competition, not cooperation. Pervasive. Pervasive seems a little bit exaggerated because I've never really experienced it that way. I mean, there's always going to be a douche and there's always going to be a bitch. Like, there are always those outliers. But as a general notion, would I say that interactions between men and women are competition? No. On the contrary, I would say interactions between women and women are more competitive as far as my experience, and I can assume that maybe competition between two men might be more pervasive because we're kind of socialized in that way, but that's another discussion. But between men and women, competition has never really seemed to be a thing to me, but maybe that's just my experience. You guys can let me know in the comments. The pervasive idea that men cannot truly understand women and vice versa, and following that no true companionship can be had between the different sexes. Well, I do think that men and women will never completely understand each other because we have different experiences of life, okay? Whatever. But that is in a small degree. It's just like the same way that I don't think two people, even if they're both women or both men, can fully understand each other because our perception, our experiences are different. However, even the usage of the word pervasive is really pissing me off because they're trying to make it seem like this is the norm when I don't really see it that way. That men cannot understand women and vice versa. I mean, I just think it's all about personality at that point. Gender is not really the point in terms of who you can and can't understand, but the way that they're conflating understanding each other with only gender as if there are no other parameters is ridiculous, and I don't think that's that pervasive either. Whoever drives that kind of narrative of like men and women can't be friends, blah, blah, that's bullshit, obviously. But really, men and women can't understand each other. Okay. The expectation that real men are strong and that showing emotion is incompatible with being strong. Anger is either framed as the exception to the rule or not as an emotion. So one thing I do agree with is that a lot of the times when people say like, oh, be a man, or don't be a baby, don't be a girl about it, I do think that that's detrimental because, you know, men are humans and humans have feelings that they're allowed to show their feelings. So I do think that it's never good to repress feelings, whether you're a man or a woman. I definitely think men have that more pushed upon them since women are the fair sex or whatever. So I do think that that's detrimental, but I don't necessarily think it's detrimental to anyone but themselves. So for themselves, I hope that men, you know, can show emotions without like being shamed or anything, because there's nothing wrong with, if you're upset, fucking cry about it. That doesn't make you any less of a man. But again, here, they're kind of framing it as if the fact that men maybe show less emotion, or some men do, they're kind of framing it in the way of saying, oh, and that hurts us because, and it's just like, I think it hurts men more and foremost because they're the ones who have to live with that, if that's the way they were, you know, socialized, that's the way their family made them feel, the society they live in. This kind of focusing on what's wrong with men and then turning it into why this affects women is a little bit disgusting to me, because if something is wrong, if there's something societally that is damaging someone, whether it's a man or a woman, we should focus on how it's damaging them first, right? Because they're the ones undergoing the pain of not being able to express themselves or whatever it is, right? I don't know. Relatedly, the idea that a real man cannot be a victim of abuse or that talking about it is shameful. See, now it seems like all of these ideas that they're pushing as, you know, still being the norm are very old school ideas. I think that in the past years, we've all advanced enough to know that men can be victims of any kind of abuse the same way that women can be the victims of any kind of abuse. So they're trying to push this narrative of like everyone still believes that men cannot be abused is bullshit. Some people who are behind on the times certainly might feel that way, but let's not portray it like this is exactly what the world is like, because this is definitely a skewed view. Obviously, we know by the name of the website, but it's crazy how much they're trying to turn this narrative into we're still living in the 1930s or something. Men are just like that. The expectation that real men are keenly interested in sex, want to have sex, and are ready to have sex most, if not all times. To be honest, I do think that Hollywood does push that narrative a lot. The narrative of women being very smart and, you know, kind of above it, and, you know, you have to like earn having sex with them, versus men who are just like googly-eyed and running behind women ready to have sex all the time. I do think that Hollywood does propagate that kind of stereotype, which is obviously untrue, but to still go around and say that you think that this form of this part of toxic masculinity is the norm is ridiculous. I don't think that anyone with brain cells would say, oh yeah, men want to have sex all the time and that's all there is to it. Men are just like that. That is the only thing they have to think about. I mean, of course they have a higher sex drive as far as science says, but that doesn't really, you can't conflate them with that, their entire being. The myth that men are not interested in parenting and are inherently unsuited to be single parents. Where does it... Okay, you guys, I need to stop reading this list because this is such bullshit. I will definitely link it below, but let me know what you think about this, because this idea of toxic masculinity, while I agree with some of what it says, like the image of men in Hollywood where they're, you know, always just looking for sex and they don't ever want to be in a relationship and they, a lot of the times, are scared of being parents. Like, these are stupid stereotypes and they don't really mean anything, and I think most people can see through that. But other than that, these kinds of norms that they're saying are completely pervasive and this is how life is, seem ridiculous and just trying to turn the narrative into a poor women who have to deal with this toxic masculinity bullshit. What do you guys think about this? Let me know, because honestly, it just seems incredibly insulting to both men and women to act like this is the actual reality, at least in the Western world. So, I don't know. Just let me know what you think and let's get on to the fan art.